4, 3, 2, 1, launch.
Hello,
Kick
everyone,
off.
and welcome to a very special Realm Royale update show. We're here to talk about the brand new changes, and joining me today, of course, is Hi-Rez Erez, the man himself.
Whoa! I just saw myself in a picture.
Yeah, it's a program feed.
Yeah,
You see yourself.
I'm famous.
You're up there.
Yeah.
Just don't get too enamored with yourself. You'll get caught out.
No, I'm kind of thinking just the other way around.
The other way around?
I used to look better when. Yeah, I was like, what is that? I was better looking when I was young.
We could edit it live and try to make it,
I need those instant filters
Yeah?
that give me the just a young version.
What would you change?
Gray hairs and eyes and
Wisdom.
fat and
That's hard work.
you
Wisdom.
call it.
So we're here to talk about some of the things we've been working on. I think at a very high level, obviously, we were internally working on new changes to the game that allow us to really kind of experiment with new things on it. And we got a friend. We got a friend. So we're here to talk about changes to the game and things we've been working on internally, and actually the newest iteration that we have to show off to the.
I can't concentrate like this.
No? So, welcome aboard. So we're back here. So he is going to step away. It's a good question.
Oh my god!
So we're here.
All right, let's do it.
You ready?
Sorry,
Real
everyone.
focus.
There's somebody else shouting here, so it's a little hard to focus
That's what we pay them for.
at this particular
We're
point.
shoutcasters. So, I think the first thing to address, which is really important, is kind of the road to today, how things happen, what happened, and why. So, take it away, Erez.
I literally cannot hear myself. Give me one more minute.
How's everyone doing today? It's been a beautiful day here in Atlanta. We're actually here in the Skillshot Media area. Actually, this set here gets used for a lot of different games, different setups, but it's brand new. I personally actually remember back when we were in a closet in the middle of our studio. If anyone visit our studio in Alpharetta, Georgia, we're in a little closet inside of one of like little storage rooms. So obviously, being able to see this really big area is really cool. We've actually been experimenting a lot with Realm Royale behind the scenes. I think. The goal we were looking for really was fast iterations, trying to solve some core metric issues where players were coming in to play the game at a very fast rate. And Erez will talk about this a little bit. But players were coming at a very fast rate, but they weren't playing the next day after or sticking around to play for long periods of time. So obviously, over time, as the game kind of evolved in the first month, the second month, we started to see those player counts start to drop down. And we saw that as an opportunity to really kind of experiment with the core gameplay and try to find something that really does hold those players and keep it sticky. We've tried very different options of messing with the combat, playing around with the forging mechanics, and trying to figure out what of the game that was currently there that players really liked and what we can enhance, and the things that were kind of detracting from the experience that we could also change or just completely rework. Did you figure it out?
I'm getting it moved. I can't think this way. All right, so what have you reviewed so far?
I talked about this really cool studio, the place where we're at, and I also talked about the fact that, when we first launched, a lot of players were coming in the door at a very fast rate, but they obviously weren't sticking around for back to play the next day. And so even though numbers were high, the players weren't staying there long enough to keep the player count high. And so we were experimenting with ways to make the game more sticky and more exciting to play over long periods of time with the combat, changing with the forging, messing with the chickens, and trying to see what worked.
Okay. So obviously we've gone through a lot of iterations in a relatively short period of time. Some of them are larger, some of them are smaller. Which camera am I looking at?
You look at this one.
Okay. And a lot of what we've found out is that people did like several aspects of the game, but we weren't really retaining people quite as long as we wanted to, and there's obviously a variety of reasons for that. But the key to where the numbers were and where the numbers are is still primarily around the number of people coming through the door. So in the first week, we were getting, we had like a couple million people come in and start playing the game, where right now it's down to, in the tens of thousands, right? So you've got a very different type of environment at least until we go through the next phase, which is both to move out of the alpha stage, that's when we expect that some players will obviously return to try the game in a more stable state, as well as the console work that we're doing, where we have a very large number of people already pre-registered to play the game. So a lot of what we're focusing over the last couple of months has been on what we need to do for stability, what we need to do for fixes, everything from hitboxes to server lag to many of the other issues that obviously were experienced initially, as well as what changes to combat we potentially need to make sure that the game is fun for everyone. And one of the things that we suffer from a little bit more than other Battle Royale games is that we heavily reward people that are good versus some of the more random states in the other games. So we tend to have more issue with new players really having a bad experience because they essentially die very quickly, and then they leave the game, don't come back, and that doesn't create the best scenario. So we're trying to do several things about that, including for some of the next versions, which will come out in about 2 weeks from now, which will have some levels of matchmaking to help retain people with groups that are more of their skill level, and some other under the cover things to help balance things out.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important to make sure that the onboarding experience is good, but I think there's also a lot of variations with our game that make it different from the other games that also came with their own challenges on making it work for those new players. I think the first thing, if we just want to go ahead and jump into what we're changing this patch and what we're experimenting with.
Yeah. So first, let's just answer the question of why it's taken a few weeks now between patches, right? Because normally we're putting out patches once a week, sometimes even multiple times in a week in various states. But we did get a lot of feedback from people that they felt like we're pushing things out too quickly without enough testing of the concepts themselves. So there were a lot of changes being put across on very high frequency. And while we view the game, and still view it at this point until we get past this phase of the alpha phase, where initially that meant to us we do get to iterate on the game in significant amounts, I think some of the labeling in the industry and what people expect now from anything that you put out is to be past that phase almost.
Sure.
So given a lot of very rapid iterations was not working in our favor. It is actually not increasing or decreasing how people are playing the game. So if you look strictly at the numbers, the key performance indicators that let us know if people are basically playing more or less, enjoying the game, staying around or not, none of those numbers changed meaningfully in any way, whether we increased time to kill, decreased time to kill, added particular weapons, remove particular weapons. So those changed to foraging or not, all of those things really had no effect on how people were actually staying around and playing the game, either positive or negative. So that's just to cover the last few weeks. We've decided to do more internal iterations instead of external ones. And the current iteration we're working with is one that we will put out pretty soon to get people's feedback. It's larger changes than you've seen in the past. We hope people will enjoy this particular patch. It's really the next 2 to 3 patches in a row over the next 2 to 3 weeks that complete the full patch and what we're trying to achieve with it. So you'll see that as time comes by. But we may even go to PTS today or tomorrow if this particular version that we're working on right now works out.
As soon as we can. And obviously, we did actually, we're playtesting once or twice a day. We went through a lot of different iterations and different changes. We played with the weapons, we played with the classes, we played with the amount of abilities you had and how you equip them and how you use them. So there's a lot of variations in there. So I think obviously we've come upon something that we feel is a next step for us to try and test with the community and see what you guys think.
Yeah. So the plan is to put out this particular patch. Some people will like it. Some people will probably hate it, as usual. But overall, we hope people will enjoy this format more than previous ones. And then we'll see what type of feedback we'll get, and we'll work with that feedback.
Cool. So the first change, which is probably the biggest one to talk about, obviously the class system was a big part of Realm Royale. But when we were doing surveys, people really focused on the abilities themselves and the weapon combinations that you could have. So in this patch, we're experimenting with having no starting class at all. Is that correct?
Right. So this particular patch will have no classes. That's the single biggest change in this patch relative to everything else you will hear. So that's the part that we will focus on, which means essentially that you can equip and find anything in the world and use it. There are some restrictions about what you can use, and we'll go through that soon because there are some abilities that are no longer potentially available. There's some other limitations that we'll talk about, but for the most part, if you see a weapon or an ability, you'll be able to utilize that, and we hope that will create a lot more combinations for people to use. Also, just to go along with that, the skins that we've made, both the default ones and ones that purchase, will work for everyone. So if you have the assassin skin as an example, you'll be able to use that on your character no matter what. So, and same thing with the warrior skin.
Yeah.
So skins will be more universal under this system.
Yeah, so if you like the mage, you like the look of the mage, or you like the look of the hunter, that'll just be a skin selection option for you to pick from. And then you'll just jump into the match and find any loot. And so you'll be able to get any ability and any weapon that you want, but there are specific restrictions around what combination there are. And it's not around classes, it's more just around, the play style and the experience you have.
Well, there's only one real restriction, which is
It's just falling over the place for me.
Which is the ability change.
Sure. So let's jump into that. So we have actually consolidated down to one ability slot and one movement slot. And so you'll be able to pick up any ability that's non-movement and put it in that slot. And you'll be able to have any movement ability and put it in the second movement slot. So you can run with blink and barricade. You can do turret and heroic leap. You can do all these kind of combinations allow you to do it, but you actually will have to have one movement ability and one ability. And the cool part about that is actually means that now when you walk up to ability and press the equip button, you don't actually have to choose what slot it goes into. It's really just, do you want to swap your current ability with what you're looking at, or your current movement ability with the movement ability that's on the ground, and it simplifies that process.
Yeah. So picking up and replacing the equipment is easier. With weapons, it's going to be the slot that the weapon is selected is the one that gets swapped out.
Right.
So if you press E to swap out your weapon, it'll swap either slot 1 or slot 2, depending on which one you currently have equipped. And because we are allowing anybody to pick up any abilities and movement, that is one of the reasons we consolidated it some more to make sure that we don't get into too many crazy combinations. Now, along with that, one of the other things that we're trying to do is make sure that abilities and movement abilities, at least on the highest rarities, on legendary, will be uniquely stronger than things in the past.
Right.
So if you find one at that level, you'll really want to utilize it. In the first patch that's coming out soon, you won't see a significant difference. There will be some available to you. It may be that the ability lasts much longer than before, not just a cooldown has changed, or in the case of something like a turret, you can actually put up 2 turrets. So those are the type of things that we will look for, is actually enhancing the legendary level ability to really allow for you to change the gameplay even more than you would previously.
Right.
And therefore, we're trying to make sure that the loot that's available in the world is not so plentiful that you have every legendary always available to you no matter what. You'll have to hunt for them a little bit more when you get one. We want players to really utilize that to win the game with that.
Right. So actually beefing up the abilities, now there's only one of them, you'll actually be able to get to maybe a bigger barricade or double turret or some really cool effects that makes that ability more impactful. And then you'll be able to actually, if you want to do turret barricade combinations, you would have a barricade on one teammate and a turret on one, and actually work together as a team to be able to build that experience. So that the abilities themselves are more powerful and the legendaries are not as plentiful. So you have to kind of find those and get those worked up.
Right.
Which will come for the Forge as well. So if you really want to get to the Forge and fight over that, you'll get that bonus there. So the next thing I want to talk about is what's happening to armor. So we're actually going to be pulling armor out of the game and actually kind of reimagining the way that works. So currently you actually start out with a low maximum amount of armor, and you pick up armor pieces to increase that maximum all the way up to a maximum of 1,200. On those armor pieces, some players may not know this, there's actually a bunch of really cool stat bonuses like reduced headshot damage, cooldown reduction, movement speed, reload speed. All these stats are on the armor. We actually feel that these stats are really cool and add a lot to the gameplay experience and make you able to kind of customize your build even more than the abilities and weapons provide. And so we're actually going to be taking those stats and making those into a new system we're calling runes. So the runes will have a specific stat. You'll pick up a rune itself and you'll get movement speed for your mount or run faster as a chicken. And you'll get those from forges and dropped in the world at a very low rate. But now you'll be able to see what stat bonuses you have very easily and be able to collect them individually.
Right, and you can collect up to six runes
Right.
In a match, and they go into the slots. It's a mix and match, so there's no limitation of a particular rune that goes in a particular slot.
Any six.
You're just going to get 6 different ones, essentially, and hope that you can try to create your build along with that. And we're kind of calling this particular patch the build a class. That's how we're viewing it internally. It's like, instead of going out with a class, you try to build the class in the way that you want to play during the match itself. And that lets people play in the style that they want, assuming they find everything they want, or
Right.
trade with other players if if people have things that you actually want for them. And we do want to focus as much as possible on group play as well, because that seems to be where people are having the most amount of fun. So here's somebody that actually created a chicken health rune that gives your chicken some additional health versus other runes, which could be a lot more impactful. That one may not be the strongest rune. There's actually even a damage rune, I believe, to increase damage or
Damage
headshots.
rune, headshot
Damage
reduction.
has been reduced, actually. I don't know if
At base,
that's
yeah,
live.
huh?
Base headshots is now.
And so you can see you can get mount
of them.
speed, you get revive from a chicken 5 seconds faster, you get chicken speed. So actually, there's a lot of synergies you can get here. So you actually get like 4 or 5 chicken runes and become very good at coming back as a chicken. You can get some of the passives that were on the classes before, like repair 5 armor per second, which originally was on the engineer. You'll be able to pick that up and actually regenerate. And so as you're hunting through the world, kind of building your own class by getting the weapons you want, finding the abilities that work for you, you can now also get the right runes that work for that experience and really build a whole play style in your wake.
Right. And the first ones we're putting out are obviously our test with them. We're going to see how well people take to them. Should we make them more powerful? Are some too strong or some too weak? Do they change the gameplay enough? Does it make it interesting enough? You can see what the rune actually looks like in the world. Some of them will come from chests. They have a very low drop rate to come from chests, but you can also craft ones in the forge. The forge has changed somewhat. It now has more limits on what you can get from the forge. So that's to help some of the randomness and how you build your class come in. I think some of the scenarios that we had before where people just go in and they get the legendary weapon class and that's basically all they shoot, that doesn't leave a lot of room for a battle royale type of game for people to play and utilize what they actually got to play the game. What they end up doing is, in our game, is finding the things that they know how to play every single time, and then they play it the same way every time, and it doesn't give you any of the resourcefulness that you're looking for in a battle royale game, which is these are the things you found, these are the limitations that we have, and
With what you get.
And yeah, and in other games there might be also a lot more things around ammunition, a lot of things around how much health or armor you can have. We make those a little bit simpler to get, which means that we need to make sure that on some of the more critical elements like abilities and weapons, that you don't just get whatever you want every single time.
Right.
So you want to either find it in the world randomly, you want to loot it from, you want to forge it when you can, but mainly we want you to go kill other players and get the loot to see if you can find the thing that you really wanted. So you can see on there's only 4 options right now. There's a health potion, armor potions, which have a lower drop rate in general of being found, a rune, and a legendary piece of item, which could be either a weapon or an ability.
Right.
And both, we expect all weapons and all abilities on the legendary level to be, have a really good, nice boost over anything else, which means that it's something that you'll really be able to utilize. But since you don't know exactly what you're getting, you'll have to figure out how to adjust your gameplay to go along with that.
Right. There's going to be a round of tweaking and balancing to make sure that all the legendary weapons and abilities have something really interesting and powerful on it. And, we may not get it right on the first shot, but we'll on subsequent patches be able to update and find the ones that either are too weak and bring them up, or the ones that are too strong bring them down. But we'll continue to update that as we go. The next cool thing, which I think is a really big part of the experience, especially fighting in forges and moving around in urban environments inside the buildings, is we'll be adding in a window vaulting system where any character that goes up to a window by holding spacebar or holding jump on the controller, you can actually vault through that window to either go in or out of the building. Now, previously before we had Soar for the mage that was able to go in and out. We felt that was just a little bit too unbalanced to have one class be able to go through windows and not all of them. And so any character, if you feel like you need to get out of a building, just jump through the window.
Yeah, and one of the big reasons we put that in is because we do have a lot of windows and a lot of closed spaces. And when you have windows, but you can't get through the windows, it really limits the strategical element of the gameplay, because you're kind of stuck in an area. You can't try to juke people. You can't chase the chickens, right? There's a lot of restrictions like that. So by allowing people to go through windows, it really opens up the strategic element of the game significantly more, because you can't come from the outside through a window to find somebody who's trying to sit in a room, right? Yeah. Those kind of things really open up the gameplay to be a lot more interesting and accessible.
SWAT teams and military call it dynamic entry, where you can enter from almost anywhere in the building or use kind of non-doorway entries to enter, and it opens up the space a lot. It means that you're not really safe in any particular spot, and you can't really camp a door because now someone can come through the window, which makes it a lot more interesting. It also means that running away is easier.
But you can also escape out of...
Yes.
If you're locked into a house because somebody's covering the entrances, and that's basically the end of your match, right?
Now you can jump out the back.
You can jump out the back,
right. Find a window to go through. So that adds a lot to the experience, and hopefully will enhance both the Forge and the first few minutes of the game where you're in buildings a lot. Right.
Now, we do want to put a warning that it's a work in progress.
Right.
So some windows may have troubles. There might be situations where you get stuck in a window. There might be some situations where you can't reach the appropriate height for the window. So just report back on any bugs that you see, and we'll try to make sure that the system gets cleaned up as much as possible.
Cool. The next thing that we're making the change for, this is actually kind of something that we've been experimenting a lot with, is we will be, in this next test, only having projectile weapons available. So none of the automatic or hit scan weapons will be in the playtest.
Yeah. There's still the great debate on automatic weapons versus no automatic weapons. So we're actually moving back a little bit more towards our first out, which did not have almost anything as far as automatic weapons are concerned. And we're just going to see how the gameplay goes. It makes us a little bit more unique than the other type of Battle Royale games. Obviously, there's some pros and cons to people who like using those weapons. But we're going to put out this version without it, and we'll see how people respond back to it. And now, since all of the weapons are currently available for everyone, where it used to be just a particular class had a particular weapon, it makes a lot more sense because we have a lot more weapons available as a whole, even as projectile weapons. So we think that may be interesting. We'll take some feedback. We're also going to work towards improving our melee weapons. At the moment, they're not as interesting. So we're going to try to improve our weapons in general, just to make them as exciting and interesting as possible.
See there, a mixture of withdraw and some proxy mine usage, and so there's actually a lot of new combinations you can make with your movement abilities and regular abilities.
Right.
You saw in that footage there. So the next thing we want to talk about is actually something that we want to add to the game to make the game a little more engaging to play, and actually have a combination where you can play the game and get cosmetic items just by playing it.
Yeah.
So this is going to be the Golden Chicken Store.
Right.
So as you're playing through the game, you will find golden chickens, which actually, if those of you remember, we actually had these golden chickens come out of the world. So these will have a very low drop rate and appear in the world, but if you collect enough of them, you can actually use them to buy cosmetics.
Yeah, so we think this is going to be something that's really going to be fun and interesting for players to get. You will get a variety of different rewards during the game as gold chicken statues. You may get some from your daily quests. If you kill someone, you actually get one. So killing is just as critical, because if you kill one, you can pick up their gold chicken statue. You'll be able to forge some. This particular first patch that we put in PTS doesn't have it, but we expect that over the next couple of weeks that will be put out. And we expect to put some really good cosmetics that people will be able to get through acquiring all these gold chickens. You may find some even as loot in boxes. So in the forge, in loot boxes sometimes, when you kill other players, when you finish the match at a certain rating, if you finish in the top 10, then there'll be an escalating number of extra gold chickens.
They're hidden everywhere.
You'll be able to get them at a variety of different places, and then go spend that in acquiring good cosmetics. And I will say that the cosmetics that we're looking for are not just the kind of old style cheap, just a recolor or something like that. They're going to be full cosmetics, whether it's mounts, skins, new drops, what do we call the trails that come out, different chickens. So it should be a lot of fun to collect those, and it'll give a reason for people to play, even if they're not fantastic at killing other people. They can still go around looting things to get their chicken statues, so they can get cosmetics for free from the store.
Sure. I think we had an image of one of the skins that would be going into that stored away, so we can find it. We can show that on there. So there it is. There's one of them. Look at her.
Yeah,
and kind of like an alchemist, scientist, evil scientist kind of girl.
And you'll be able to get that purely through spending chicken.
Just finding
statues.
golden chickens out in the world.
Now, it's not necessarily going to be a few. It may take you a week of effort to go collect enough to get a skin like this, but you will be able to do it.
Cool. So one thing to touch on as well while we're here, we will be extending Battle Pass number 1. The date in game is actually not correct. We'll be extending that a little bit further. Obviously, we wanted to make sure that we had the core gameplay figured out. We wanted to really experiment with what's there so we get the game right. The Battle Pass will extend. So if you haven't had your chance to get your Raptor yet, or go all the way to the Battle Pass 1, we'll give you a little bit more time to do that. We're also going to be, throughout this whole process, obviously want to make sure the game is correct. We have been working on console and making sure that feels good, and kind of going through the process to make sure that works. So we're hoping to have more updates on console coming soon, but it's something that we're still working on.
And we're also planning on working on the larger scale game where people can play as a 40 versus 40 or 50 versus 50 type of gameplay with two sides, which is typically a lot more casual and allows players to go in and have fun on a side without being quite as I'm the last survivor in there. So you can go with your friends, especially if you're introducing new people to the game. They don't necessarily have to go into the final death combat, even though it's still a one kill. They're able to participate much better than it would be under the current scenario.
Right. And obviously, going forward, now that we've kind of had this next test out, we can put it out. We do want people to kind of look forward to new, kind of more continuous updates. So we'll be looking to go on a regular patching schedule shortly, and get some new updates out there and kind of continue with that process. But we had to kind of take it a step back, move internally, get a lot of testing done, and figure out what works, and then come back to you guys with something that we're
And we're really hoping that this particular iteration sticks fairly well, which means that if it does, we can just have all our focus on game polish, cool new weapons and abilities,
more skins,
and more things to do in the world. Part of what was also interesting to us about unifying the class system is allowing new abilities and weapons to rotate through the game. So you may see in a month of now a few weapons going out and different weapons coming in, and a few abilities going out, the new abilities going in, to keep the kind of meta refreshed all the time. So that way it doesn't get stagnant every single time.
Well, I think one of the cool parts about this new system for loot and for other items is you actually no longer run into something you can't loot anymore. Right, that's what we had with the class system. Is you could be an assassin and you have these other 4 classes that you walk up to loot on the ground. It's not for you. You have that red circle through it. You know it's not yours. You just have to disenchant it. And as we were going through, we actually were working on adding more classes to the game, and that kind of just exacerbated the issue a little bit, where most of the loot you found was not for you. But now that we have this kind of open loot system, it opens the possibilities. It means most loot is valuable. Right.
Now, in addition, you'll see a variety of other things that we didn't talk about when we test. Some of them have to do with everything from fixing trails when the people are skydiving to be seen better, magical chests that potentially let each of your people on your team pick up an item from them. So there's a variety of other changes, but we tried to hit on the larger things that are the bigger highlights.
Right. Well, if you guys are ready, go ahead and throw some questions up for us in chat, and I'll read them here through the power of technology on my phone. So, if you have any questions that you want us to touch on before we close out the stream, anything kind of really burning in the back of your minds. So as these come in, we'll kind of figure that out.
Do you see any consistently asked questions?
Why did you not remove legendaries from chests?
We didn't remove legendaries from chests because that is actually part of what a battle royale game is all about. And we think that the opportunity to, infrequently at least, get something that gives you an opportunity to be excited about what you get versus just you open it up and you just get the same generic thing over and over again is what creates a lot of good highs during a battle royale game. If you're the better player, you most likely are going to kill that person anyway and loot their loot. So it really, for better players, it doesn't become too much of an issue. But it's part of the randomness that makes battle royale games fun.
What happens to our battle pass skins? So those will just become regular skins to choose from. And the same goes for the default models for the classes. Those will all become available as skins to choose. So if you really want to play as the warrior all the time, or you want to play looking like the mage, those will all just be cosmetic options to choose from.
Yeah, so it actually opens it up to play your style, look your way. Trademarked.
Play your style, look your way. Will you add something to the map? We are actually looking to kind of obviously continue to update the map. If you guys have been, over the last 2 months, we've added the Dragon Bones expansion, the Waterfall expansion. We expanded out the Ice Cavern tunnel in there. So we're always working on the map and making it look better and improve the way it's
We're also going to test out a little bit more in the way of how to funnel player through the maps. You will see now in this new patch that's coming out is that there are places where your mounts can no longer pass. So in the past, there was the giant mountain, obviously, that you cannot ride your mounts up, but there will be other steep inclines which the mounts will no longer be able to go up. They can still go up 90% of the places that you were expecting to go before, but if it's a super steep incline, then you won't be able to get past it. And that's to allow us in the future to maneuver the map a little bit more, so there are some more choke points and some more additions for being able to control flow.
Seeing a lot of questions around the classes in general and kind of attachment to the classes the way we were playing before. Can you just kind of reiterate on why classes versus no classes and how that transition took place?
Sure, go ahead.
A lot of people are actually asking, the classes themselves.
Did you explain that the first time? Did I explain that?
That was you.
I did?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My memory is shot. So the removal of the class is just to give people more opportunities to play the way that they want, with the ability to change the way that you play to fit what you have. So we think that part of the missing element in a battle royale that we were losing on is the problem that people were essentially playing a class, getting all the pieces of that class relatively easily, and then playing the same exact way and not really having to adapt at all to the way that the game it was designed. So by allowing anybody to pick up anything and finding and utilizing the things that you find, you have to adapt more and show your skill that you can use a different set of weapons and abilities together to accomplish your goal of winning. And by having it kind of open-ended like that, it just creates a lot more variations in gameplay, and variation in gameplay leads to something that doesn't get us stale quickly.
Right.
Of course, there's also the issue of balance between classes, whether people think somebody like in the engineer is overpowered right now versus another class being overpowered. We had issues with a lot of players playing one specific class, and then all the loot would be much more oriented to that particular class versus not. So this is going more to what we see in a battle royale game, where anybody can do anything based on what you pick up, and we really want to everybody try that out, give us the feedback on it.
Right. I mean, you can still create those by using the forges and collecting loot, and also sharing it with your teammates, right? So if you liked Concussion Bomb, Blink, Sniper Rifle, you can go find Concussion Bomb, Blink, and Sniper Rifle and kind of create that experience yourself. But it doesn't mean you're now limited to only that. So you have that option to find. And actually, by playing in duos and squads, if we're playing together and I really want that, and you find a sniper rifle, you can let me know it's on the ground, and I can go pick it up. And you can actually use group loot to get that combination.
Right. And we do want people to play as much as possible in teams. We always envisioned from the start that this would be a much more team-oriented game. In fact, our first one out was only to have the squad queue. Remember when we put out the first day or two, we didn't even enable the other queues because we really wanted it to be a team-oriented gameplay. Because we had such high demand for people wanting to try out in solos and duos, we added those queues as well.
Right.
But we want people to play it more as a unit versus just a pure solo. And we actually keep coming back and forth to that, like how much should we restrict it or not, so people play it more in a team format. And obviously, being able to share loot properly like that across everyone allows people to create the build-outs that make sense for the role that they're trying to get.
Right. And obviously, by making the abilities stronger themselves, when you hit the legendary level, it means that then you should only have the two abilities, the movement and the single one. Now we can make those even more powerful without worry about the combinations coming through.
Right.
What days are you planning on patching? Is there going to be a patch day every week?
For the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to try to patch each week. We may get it, we may not get it. There's going to be a patch. PTS will hopefully be up either tonight if the build works or tomorrow if the build works. So over the next couple of days, we expect at least PTS to be up. Depending on how that goes, then we put it to live if it looks like it's stable or not. And then next week, we want to try to add the patch that will allow the gold chicken statues to be utilized and any kind of balance changes that go along with that.
Right.
And after that, we're going to try both for the larger two sides fighting each other. So like a 40 versus 40 or something along those lines. See how that works. That's the general progression that we're looking forward to over the next 2 weeks or so.
And obviously, this is our next round of changes, right? So jump on the PTS, give us feedback, let us know how it's playing and what you think about it. It is still an alpha, early access game, so we're still kind of working through what is the best realm royale that is going to work the best. So just make sure you try it and give us your thoughts.
Right. We're also working towards a tutorial and several other things to introduce new players into the game in an easier format to make sure that they have a good experience at the start, as well as groupings for new players versus more experienced players. So you just don't insta-die a few times and then leave, which is what was happening to a lot of players.
Right.
So those are the kind of things that we're going to try to do to help out to make sure that population is able to sustain itself for a long period of time past the initial phase.
Right. I think one of the cool exercise that would be fun to do while you guys are preparing for the PTS is kind of think about what will be some fun combinations of an ability and movement ability that aren't in the game now, right? So like Concussion Bomb and Charge, for example, or Barricade and Heroic Leap. Try to think through like what would be some really fun differentiations of the abilities that are in there now that you really wouldn't be able to until this PTS comes out. There's some cool stuff.
Yeah, well, and not only that, there's the weapon combinations of abilities, which you couldn't have before, right? You couldn't have a sniper with a heroic leap.
Right. Well, you can do sniper rifle, throwing axe, heroic leap.
Yeah.
Right. So like, there's a lot of combinations now that exist that didn't exist before. There'd be really some cool things in there. Turret and blink, do some fun stuff in there. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Some good questions there. So obviously we have some more information coming on when the PTS is going to be available. So we'll stay tuned for updates on that. We'll be kind of going back and fixing things up and make sure we get it on PTS soon. If you have feedback, feel free to send it over through the social channels or on normal forums and Reddit. And we look forward to seeing you in the next one, guys.
Thank you for your time.